In studio now to give us some more perspective on a local front as to how Eskom's power problems are impacting South Africa's industry. More importantly, those that are in the manufacturing front is Henk Langehoven from SEIFSA. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. Your insights need to fall onto the right ears today. And you've got very strong beliefs as to how much damage Eskom and its potential rolled out blackouts this year could negatively impact your sector.
It's a difficult question, very complex question to answer because our sector is so diverse, metals and engineering, and it's 34% of manufacturing, so it isn't the overall picture. But what we did is we had a look at what happens if you have to cut 2 hours out of your either one shift or two shifts or three shifts. And then if you make all sorts of other assumptions about the difference between the different groupings, you get to a potential loss. If you have 20 days, in other words a full month, every day losses. So up to 23% it can do. I think the production numbers that came out now for November is really the first official numbers that are telling us what it could do. It wasn't for 20 days, it happened every second or every third day, but it was consistent and that for the first time gave us an idea that what can happen if you can't rely on your electricity supply.
The 23% that you referred to, that's related to production.
Yes.
Can you quantify it maybe in rand terms?
It was in the order of 6 billion, I think. The value add would be 1.5 of that. I must say, electricity is a lot for some of the components, like the Arcelors and those people. They use a lot of electricity, up to 20% of their costs. On average, for the metals and engineering industry, because it's so diverse, it's not that high. But the problem is, if you don't have it, you can't produce.
Exactly. We saw what happened last year with the strikes, and now this almost seems as though it's another backhanded example as to a negative impact on the industry. The worst case scenario here?
Well, we hope it doesn't happen, and being South Africans, I think we will stand together. We will have to work on both fronts, on trying to save, which will not be easy, and trying to get as much space for Eskom in terms of supply via IPPs, etc., so that they can actually catch up with their maintenance, because this is a short-term problem. We're not going to fix the short-term problem. We'll have to handle the problem.
What are some of your members saying? Are they looking at alternative sources of energy and power, or are they looking to scrap some of their projects altogether?
Google, the last one I can't answer. I hope that isn't the case. The fact of the matter is we cannot replace Eskom as a supplier. We can try and save, and that is happening. That is happening on a broad level. The figures that I've seen, between 20 and 30% of investment last year went to actually energy efficiency programs. So that is a good sign, but your problem is your costs, your opportunity cost of that is that you couldn't spend it on extension of your production capacity or on renewal of your capacity. And that's actually the real worry that we have. Hence my answer on the last part of your question. I hope the guys are not throwing their plans away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe from an employability perspective, we had the strikes, that's been settled now. Are we moving more towards mechanization and maybe trying to ease up on the costs as you make mention of?
That is an interesting question. People sort of globally accept that the sector is getting more capital intensive. That has not happened. I've done quite a lot of work on investment and on what they do to mitigate depreciation, etc. It has not happened. Your problem is that if one cost factor, which is now, in this case, labor, if we can use that as an example, goes completely out of sync with the overall situation, then it could happen. But if you're in such a tight spot, I mean, yesterday the PMI came out, and their price indicator declined, and we have seen on the intermediary production price index, which is 70% is metals and engineering. That came down from about 9% to the range of 3, 4, 5%, which is massive. It's almost half the price increases. I ascribe, and many commentators are saying, well, it's actually the soft market. The domestic market has not picked up the way we thought, and neither is the international market. We really hoped that it would have been better than 2014, but and it looked well until March, April 2014, and then the wheels came off.
And your view on how the macroeconomic environment might continue to impact your business now, because we've got the oil price, we've got the Eskom concerns, and global growth now being slashed by the World Bank today.
That is a worry. I am
You're
working on it. You're actually asking. I try not to be, but you're asking me a few days earlier. I'm working on that report, and I must say, looking at the PMI, for example, the business activity index is a very, very good indicator of what happens in metals and engineering. It leads our trends by about 18 months to 2 years. The fact that ours, that specific sub-index dropped by something like 14% in December worries me a bit. It didn't change the trend. It didn't change the long-term trend that we see. But I'm now worried that it will. If it continues, that it will change the trend. Before that, I thought that by the end of 2015 we will see growth. I'm now concerned that it might be pushed out. Thinking of what you just said about the international market, the oil price, of course, is a very good sign. I mean, it will bring our other energy costs down. But those sort of costs are 3, 4, 5% of our cost structure.
So a lot of work needs to be done.
Just
to follow up, has there been any liaisons between yourself as well as Eskom, maybe to give you confirmed times so that you can plan your production going forward?
Our members are active members of the Energy Intensive User Group. They are attending, and there's a stakeholder group that Eskom is managing, which they are attending. And I'm actually going tomorrow morning to a meeting of BUSA, where we also, all of them are together, where we're interacting with a government. And there is a plan. It's a case of getting it implemented and done, and everybody bringing their part. I must say, the papers that I saw is creative, and like I said, I'm confident in South Africans that they will stick together. We will talk a lot, but we have to stop talking and actually
get doing exactly.
Doing it. Yeah,
the proof is in the pudding, quite clearly.
It'll be tough. There's no doubt.
Mr. Langehoven, good to have you with us today. Hopefully there'll be some light at the end of the tunnel following your discussions tomorrow. Good to have you with us. Thanks to Henk Langehoven, who's the Chief Economist at SEIFSA.